Okay, this is going to be a video about factoring trinomials that have a leading coefficient not equal to 1. So an example of this would be something you need to factor like 3x squared plus 11x plus 6. Now I'm aware that you can guess and check these types of problems. This video is going to be about using a method that will always give you an answer. Okay, so the method we're going to use here is called splitting the middle term. And the reason we're calling it splitting the middle term is that we're going to take that 11x and we are going to split it into, 1 plus 10 or maybe 3 plus 8, something that adds up to 11 that's going to allow us to factor by grouping. So the first thing we want to remember is that 3 is A, 11 is referred to as B, and 6 is referred to as C. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply A times C. And so in this situation, we've got 3 times 6, which gives us 18. The second thing we need to do is find something that adds to B, but multiplies to the product AC. So we need something that adds to 11, but multiplies to 18. So we think about what multiplies to 18, and the first thing I think of is 2 and 9. And sure enough, 2 plus 9 is 11. So those are going to be the numbers we're going to use to split the middle. So we're going to rewrite our trinomial as 3x squared plus 2x plus 9x plus 6. It doesn't matter if you put the 9 or the 2 first. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to group the first two terms, and we're going to group the second two terms. And we're going to look for the greatest common factor of each. So I call step 3 group and take out the greatest common factor. So I'm just going to write group and GCF. So when I look here, I have 3x squared plus 2x. So I'm going to take out an x. And I'm left with 3x plus 2. Now I go over here and I have 9x plus 6. Well, 3 divides into both of those. So I'm going to write plus 3 times, 9x divided by 3 would be 3x. And 6 divided by 3 would be 2. Now you'll notice that what's in the parentheses are identical. That is supposed to happen. If what you have in the parentheses is not identical, you have made a mistake. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to rewrite as two binomials. As the product, I should have typed this. So let's take a second and think before we rewrite. We know that this is really like x times 3x plus 2. And this is like 3 times 3x plus 2. So we want to remember that we're really multiplying x times 3x plus 2 plus 3 times 3x plus 2. Like I said, I want you to keep that in mind for our next step. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our greatest common factors and put them in the first binomial. So we're going to have x plus 3. And then our second binomial is going to be 3x plus 2. And we only need one of them. And here's why. Remember the fact I wanted you to remember that this is really just like x times 3x plus 2. Well, if I were to multiply out these two blue binomials, the first thing I would do is distribute the x. And then the second thing I would do is distribute the positive 3. And you'll see those 4 pink arcs, that's the same as if I were to go on the other side. So our final answer is x plus 3 times 3x plus 2. Let's do another one. Okay, so for our second example, let's do 4x squared plus 17x minus 15. Now remember, the first thing we want to do is multiply together our a and c. So here we're going to multiply together 4 times negative 15, and that gives us negative 60. Then we need something that adds up to 17, because that's b, but multiplies to negative 60. So the first thing I want to point out here is that we are now multiplying to a negative number. That means we're going to need one positive factor and one negative factor. We need those two factors to add to positive 17. So what I'm not going to do first, I'm just going to come up with things that multiply to 60, and then I'm going to worry about the negative, because I know that if I'm adding to a positive 17, that the smaller factor will need to be negative. So let's see, we've got 2 times 30. That doesn't work, because if I made the 2 negative, that would be positive 28. 3 goes into 60 20 times. Well, if I made the 3 negative here, negative 3 plus 20 is 17, so that's the winning pair. Now I'm going to split the 17 into negative 3x plus 20x. And remember, it does not matter what order you put those in. Now I'm going to group together the first two terms and the last two terms. And I'm going to take out the greatest common factor. For the first two, the greatest common factor is x. Now I know what you're thinking. The greatest common factor for the first two is x on the last problem. That is not always the case. Do not think that is a rule. We've got 4x minus 3. I've got 20x minus 15, and now my greatest common factor is 5. And 20 divided by 5 is 4, and 15 divided by 5 is 3. And once again, they're identical. So this is like x times 4x minus 3. This is like 5 times 4x minus 3. So if I group them to become the binomial x plus 5 times 4x minus 3, we have equivalent statements. And if you were to multiply this back using a method like FOIL, you would get the same thing as you would in the previous line. So there is our final factorization.